Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be the eyeshadow palette tag that was created by Ali Glines and Samantha March. I'll link their videos in the description box below, but I loved the idea of the tag. I love eyeshadow palettes so much, so I've been watching these videos like crazy whenever they pop up in my subscription box, and I'm excited to film it and share my answers with you guys. I'm also excited because today's video is a collab with my friend Ashley Clady. She is one of the sweetest people on YouTube, and I really mean that. She's the type of person who just smiles as she talks, and she radiates so much light and positivity and kindness. I love watching her videos, but I really truly love her as a person as well. I think she does amazing reviews on her channel, and I'm so excited to do this video with her because she loves eyeshadow palettes as well. In fact, a few of her reviews have convinced me whether or not I should actually add a palette to my collection. So I really love her channel. She does amazing declutters. She has some mom content because she is a mom to the sweetest baby girl. So I'll link Ashley's channel and her videos in the description box below. If you guys like my channel, I think you'll love her channel as well. I feel like we have very similar styles in terms of videos and reviews, so I'm sure you guys will enjoy her. But thanks again to Ashley for collabing with me on today's video, and let's jump into it and I'll share my answers. Okay, so the first one is show your newest palette. For me, that is the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. I picked this up a few weeks ago, and I've really been enjoying it. This one has been on my wish list for what feels like forever, and I finally decided to grab it, and I've been enjoying it a lot. If you like green shadows, this is going to be an amazing option for your collection. The only shadow that gives me a little bit of difficulty is the shade Black Widow, but other than that, I've had a lot of luck with it. It has 6 metallics and 2 matte shadows, which is what I love because a lot of palettes do focus more on matte shadows. So I love that there are so many beautiful shimmery options in this palette. The formula is just very rich and intense and beautiful. And if you are a colorful eyeshadow fan, I think you'll enjoy this palette as well. It's been fun to play with. I will film a Get Ready With Me very soon and do a more in-depth review so you can hear all of my thoughts on it. But so far, I've been loving it. Next, we have Show Your Oldest palette. I honestly couldn't remember which palette was my oldest palette, so I had to go back and look at some of my older videos to decide. And there were 2 palettes that I was talking about in 2017 that I still have. I purchased them right around the same time, so I don't actually know which one is technically older, so I just thought I would share both of them. The first one is the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I told you guys that this is the last spring and summer I'll be using this one before I declutter it because it is getting pretty old. The majority of the shadows are still great, but I noticed that there are a couple that don't perform quite as well as they used to, but I have enjoyed this palette for years. It is such a staple of mine because it has gorgeous neutrals and then also a few like fun, warm, colorful tones, but it's not overly colorful. I love a good colorful palette, but sometimes you just want something that's a little bit more neutral, and I love breaking this one out during the spring and summertime, and it's definitely one of my favorites. So I will be so sad when I have to actually declutter this one because I've loved it for years. The other palette is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. For some reason, I don't feel like this one is as old, even though I did get them right around the same time, and I think it's because these shadows still perform perfectly well. This was my very first Anastasia palette. The shadows are just so blendable and easy to work with, and I still enjoy this one. After purchasing this one, I did purchase quite a few Anastasia palettes over the years, so I love that this one kind of introduced me to the brand, and there are still shades in here I love to wear. It's kind of one of those palettes that's just a staple in my collection, and I enjoy the colors so much. So those are my 2 oldest palettes. I still use them, I still love them, but I will say this Too Faced one is probably on its way out very soon. Next, we have Show Your Most Expensive palette. My most expensive palette would be from NATASHA DENONA. I actually have 2 of her $65 palettes. I haven't tried any of her full-size palettes yet because they're pretty expensive. I think she has some that are like $129, some that are a little bit more expensive. $65 is kind of my limit. I can't imagine that I'll ever spend more than this on a palette. I do enjoy these. I think the formula is very, very beautiful, but I went back and forth so many times on whether or not I actually wanted to spend $65 on the Sunrise palette when it was first released. I'm glad I did because I genuinely enjoy these palettes. I think the shadows are so gorgeous, but honestly, I'm the type of person that will buy like a $3 palette. So for me, super expensive palettes are not usually something I really even consider. So these were a splurge as it was, but I do enjoy them. I think they're gorgeous. Speaking of affordable palettes, the next one is show your most affordable palette. And when I watch these tags, I feel like a lot of people have been mentioning these. These are the $3 e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadow palettes. These are amazing. I've been raving about them on my channel, I think since January or February, and I just placed an order for the additional shades because I was waiting for them to go back in stock. I have the two neutral quads, but there are some more colorful ones, and I can't wait to use them. I just got them in the mail a few days ago. So I will definitely be putting those to the test very soon because I'm just so impressed by these, and it just goes to show you don't have to spend a ton of money on eyeshadow palettes to get great quality. I mean, these are $65, and while they're good, these $3 ones come very, very close. I just enjoy them so much. So these are my most affordable and just one of the best palettes that I've tried in a long time. Next, we have a Show Your Everyday palette. That would be the ColourPop Going Coconuts palette. I love this. It is one of my favorite palettes. The shades in here are perfect, and I use it all the time, whether I'm doing an everyday look or if I'm doing more of like a smoky or colorful look, I'll still reach into this and pull some of the shades into my look, but it's perfect for everyday wear because you do get a good mix of neutrals. There are matte shadows and metallics, lighter shades, deeper shades, so no matter what type of look I want to do, this one is perfect. I also love the fact that ColourPop shadows are so blendable and easy to work with because when it comes to everyday quick makeup, I don't want something that's going to take a lot of effort to blend out onto the eyes. These blend out in seconds and the shades are just so perfect. The undertones are perfect, and I recommend this palette to everyone. Whenever people come to my house and we're like playing with makeup, a lot of my friends and family don't wear super colorful, dramatic looks. So when they see this palette, they get excited. They're like, that palette is perfect because it really is a great everyday palette no matter what type of makeup you like to wear. So I love this one. I could rave about it all day. So for my most colorful palette, there were a couple that I could have chosen because I do have quite a few colorful palettes. I have the ColourPop 9-pan palettes, but those are more monochromatic. So I didn't want to pull out a 9-pan blue palette and count that as my most colorful. I think that I have to go with the Magic Mini by JUVIA'S Place. JUVIA'S Place does colorful shadows so well. They're very intense and vibrant, and I think this palette has 2, maybe 3 neutrals in it, but the majority of the shades are very, very colorful. So typically I will use this palette as more of an accent palette, and I'll pull in 1 or 2 of the shades to complete my look. But if you're really good with color and you tend to do very unique looks, you could create some really interesting eyeshadow looks using this one. I think this palette is so gorgeous, and I love the bottom 2 rows with the blues and the greens. It's just so interesting and fun to look at. So this would definitely be my most colorful. For Show Your Smallest palette, I would have to go with the e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadow palettes again. These come with 4 shadows, but you can definitely create complete looks with these, and I love the fact that they are so small and compact because even if you were to throw 2 of these in your bag, they take up like no room at all. For Show Your Biggest palette, I would have to say that these are my biggest palettes. These are from ColourPop, and they're not super large, but they're definitely the largest palettes that I own. I'm not typically the biggest fan of large palettes. I feel like they're big and bulky and hard to store, and I get a little bit overwhelmed when I reach into them. So I don't think that I'll really go any larger than these in the future when I buy palettes, and these can be a little bit large as well, but I do feel like they're a little bit more compact. These both come with 30 shadows each, and actually I went out of town at the end of last year, and I did bring the Bare Necessities palette with me. It actually fit in my makeup bag. My makeup bag's a little bit bigger, but it was perfect because I had everything that I needed. Sometimes if you're packing a travel palette, you feel like you're missing like 1 or 2 shades, so you might want to throw in an extra palette, an extra few colors. This one is perfect because if you love to do eyeshadow like I do, there are so many options, so you really won't get bored if you bring it with you when you go out of town. That might not be practical for everyone, but if you're somebody who enjoys a smaller makeup collection, this might be perfect for you as well because there are so many shades in one palette. I also love the So Jaded palette. This one is large as well, but you get such a variety. So if you are a neutral fan, I would stick with Bare Necessities, but if you do love pops of color, So Jaded is such an interesting palette because you get so many different colors, but you can create so many different complete looks. And a lot of the shades in here are a little bit more cool toned, but honestly, you get a touch of everything. So even though these palettes are a little bit larger, I don't feel like they're overwhelmingly big or hard to store. They're kind of like the perfect large eyeshadow. eyeshadow palettes. But again, I don't think that I would purchase anything larger than these because these are pretty large for me. Next is Show Your Palette with the Best Memory. I definitely had to choose my ColourPop It's My Pleasure palette. This palette is my favorite for so many reasons, but when I first got it, I think it was like Valentine's Day or February, and we were out of town in New York City. We had the best weekend, and this was the only palette that I brought with me. So I remember wearing it that weekend, and then whenever I have like a special occasion or I just feel like I want my makeup to look extra special, this is a palette that I reach for because it is so beautiful and unique. It comes with some of my I was going to say it comes with some of my favorite shades because I love pinks and purples, and I just enjoy it. On top of that, it's one of my favorites, and it has such a good memory because I got to do a collab with ColourPop, which is my favorite brand, where I did like a curated bundle and I chose this palette. So when I think about this palette, it just makes me happy. This is still my original one. I'm surprised I haven't hit pan on some of those shimmer shadows, but I think it's because it's not a palette that I wear every day, but when I do wear it, it makes me so happy. I just love looking at it. So this one definitely has some good memories attached to it. Next is Show a Palette Worth the Hype. The Anastasia Beverly Hills Jackie Aina palette is totally worth the hype. I feel like I hyped this palette up so much on my channel. Now, it is a limited edition palette, and last I checked, which wasn't too long ago, it was on sale on the Anastasia website for $31.50. So I do feel like it's on its way out. And that's unfortunate because it is one of the best palettes that I've tried. I actually wore this again yesterday, and every single time I use it, I'm so impressed by how well it works. The shadows are so blendable and easy to work with, but they're so vibrant and intense. And typically when you have really vibrant, intense shadows, they don't blend out that easily. They take a little bit of work, but that is not the case with this palette. No matter what type of look I'm going for, whether it's pink or purple or red or neutral, I just love how it turns out every single time. And this is one of the best palettes that I've ever tried, and one of Anastasia's best palettes. I actually think it's Anastasia's best palette. I will be so sad when this palette is gone because I've just been so impressed by it. And it's so weird because I don't think originally I was planning on grabbing it, but I saw a couple of reviews and people said it was worth the money. I was like, okay, I'll try it. And now I'm like the person that is constantly hyping this up. But I really do think this is worth the hype, worth the money. It's so gorgeous. So the next one is Show a Palette Not Worth the Hype. I actually don't really have any of those in my collection right now. I just did an eyeshadow palette declutter not too long ago. And even then, I don't remember decluttering any that I felt like weren't worth the hype. The last palette that I tried that I can really think of that wasn't worth the hype in my opinion was, oh, I just changed my mind. I was originally going to say the Tartelette palettes, but it has been years since I've tried those. I know so many people love those palettes, but they just didn't work for me. I felt like they were a little bit more on the dry side, a little bit difficult to blend out. I had the original Tartelette, and then I also had Tartelette in Bloom. So when they released Tartelette Toasted, I thought about grabbing it, but I just didn't have a good experience with the first two, and I think that's why I haven't tried anything from Tarte in such a long time. But I know a lot of people love those palettes. They get so much hype. So I think it just comes down to personal preference. But the palette that I thought of before I was going to say those would be the Anastasia Beverly Hills Carli Bybel palette. I think that was the next palette that was released after Jackie Aina, and I was so excited because the Jackie Aina palette works so well for me. But when I got the Carli Bybel palette in the mail, there were shades in there that just were so lackluster. As a whole, the palette fell a little bit flat, and I was pretty disappointed because I felt like the swatches on Instagram, the reveal video, like everything looked so beautiful. And then when I actually used the shadows on the eye, they weren't as great as I was hoping. And I think it's because it did follow the Jackie Aina palette, which was so amazing for me personally. It didn't live up to my expectation because I feel like the bar was a little bit higher than it would have been if I hadn't tried the Jackie Aina palette. So I'll have to go with the Tarte Tartelette palettes and the ABH Carli Bybel palette. The next one is Show Your Favorite Palette from a Favorite Brand. So I actually just filmed a video like that where I shared my #1 palette from 10 of my favorite brands. So I'll link that video below. And there were quite a few of those palettes in this video, but I did want to touch on one that I didn't get to share for any of the other questions, and that is the Persona Identity palette. So I haven't tried a lot of products from this brand, but this palette is one of the best palettes that I've tried. I think the shadows are so easy to work with, so it really is one of my everyday palettes. I'm wearing it today along with one of the ColourPop Super Shock shadows, but the matte shadows just blend out very, very easily. The metallics are gorgeous, and it is a little bit more of a cool toned palette, which I feel like is hard to find these days, especially cooler toned neutral palettes. So I love reaching for this one when I do want a little bit more of a cooler look, and it's just great for everyday wear. I think it is a little bit of an underrated palette because when you look at it, it doesn't look super exciting or like anything really unique, but that's why I love it because it is such a great everyday palette, and it does have 16 different options. I mainly use the neutral shadows, but there are a couple of warmer and more colorful shades in here, but I just love this one so much, so I had to share it for one of my answers, and it definitely is one of my favorite palettes. My most used palette is one that I already mentioned in today's video. That is the ColourPop Going Coconuts palette. I think I mentioned this as my everyday palette, so it kind of makes sense that my everyday palette would be my most used palette. I reach for this one multiple times a week, and I'm sure that I'm going to hit pan on at least 2 of these shadows very soon because I do use it so often. But this is definitely my most used. I've only had it since like the end of last year, but out of all of my palettes, I reach for this one the most. Okay guys, that is the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I would love to know which palettes you would choose for these different questions, so let me know in the comment section below. And again, I'll link Ashley's video below along with Samantha's video and Allie's video because they are the creators of the tag, and I would love to see you guys film this. So if you have a YouTube channel, film this video, let me know so I can watch it. But otherwise, I'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.